Welcome to the June 3rd, 2019 Informal County Commission meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order. We don't have any presentations or anyone to address the commission, so we're going to move right to our public hearing or to our zoning. Our first one is CZ6 2019, application of Brandy Jackson from AG to AGC. Mr. Tyndall, I think you're getting your presentation loaded up. So the floor is yours when you're ready.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, County Commission. We have one new case for you this evening. It's the applicant, Brandy Jackson. The agent is Robbie Christie. It's our case number CZ6 2019. This is 19.56 acres, currently zoned ag. Applicant wishes to go to ag commercial. This piece of land is a stone's throw from Dixon County on the south side of the river there. It is not an extension of the zoning classification. Property fronts the south frontage of Mount Herman Road, approximately 3,500 feet west of the Mount Herman Road, Rise Chapel Road intersection. The description of the property is a rolling hills with tree line and pasture. It does have a venue barn that's used for weddings and company parties, gardens and tree groves for photography, along with horses, cattle, and chicken on site, so people can interact and take pictures with them. It's in the rural area, and it's also in the Cumberland planning area. This is County District number 4. The only comment we received from other departments was from Cunningham Utility District. This site is currently only served by a 2-inch water line, so some water upgrades may be needed, and that's something that they'll take up between them, the Codes Department, and Cunningham Water District. Staff recommended approval. I'll show you some pictures here in a moment. There's the site as you look from Mount Herman Road. There's the barn that's already been built down there as a barn. They're wishing to convert it to more of a event facility for the area. A little down to the right, again, this property's a little over 18 acres. Here's the road leading from the property. This is across the street. There's a old C1 zone piece of property across the street, but it's not being used right now, it's vacant. Just a little further up the road. Here's the property is on the left, and the property here on the right. So it's sort of down in that area where it falls away to the right there is where that barn was there. Planning Commission recommended approval. Proposed zoning request is consistent with the adopted land use plan, and the ag commercial zoning district serves to create individual proprietary businesses convenient and compatible with the rural settings. Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Any questions of Mr. Tyndall on CZ6 2019? All right, thank you, Mr. Tyndall. At this time, we'll go into public hearing to hear comments related to CZ6 2019. I would ask anyone that would like to address this particular zoning case to come to the podium where Mr. Tyndall was on the right. Please give us your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of CZ6 2019? Yes, sir. Please come forward. If you would, give us your name and address and try to limit your remarks to 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. My name's Robbie Christie. I live at 1366 Mount Herman Road. We're making the barn to where, we'll have somewhere for someone to come and enjoy photos, family photos, senior pictures, along with getting married, event for company parties, and such as that. We've already started some gardening areas in the wood line. We're going to have gardens there. We have a pond on site. We do have animals on site for photo opportunities for, like I said, for weddings or for photos. We just want to add something to that part of the community that can be used not only for weddings but for other things. We want to add something out there. Anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Any questions? Commissioner Ray?
Mr. Christie, That structure has passed all inspections and all permits have been pulled.
All the permits have been pulled. We've talked to Mr. Streeter in the codes department. Once we get the zoning taken care of, we're going to get a structural engineer to come through and sign off on everything. And we're working with the codes department to make sure everything is up to standard.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Pritchard?
Sir, the animals you said on the property, who maintains those?
We do.
Do you live close by?
We're building a house on the property as well as a caretaker house. We'll be living on site.
Okay, so until you do that, you do maintain those animals?
Yes, ma'am. It's a portion of the farm that I already live on and work. So it's an extension. It's just, we surveyed out approximately 20 acres to do this, so the whole farm wouldn't have to be rezoned to
Okay.
a agriculture, commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Knight?
I'm just curious, what animals are you having on there?
Right now, we have horses and cattle. We're in the process, we're gonna have chickens on site, but horses and cows are on the site, and they'll be on this property and on the rest of the farm that's adjacent to it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Christie.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on behalf of CZ6 2019? Anyone else to speak on behalf? Anyone in the audience to speak in opposition to CZ6 2019? Anyone to speak in opposition? All right, we will now close the public hearing on CZ6 2019. Commissioners, you'll see on your agenda, CZ3 2019 was deferred from April. The application of Clarksville Montgomery County Industrial Development Board, Knox and Shirley Thomas from AG to M2. Mr. Tyndall, I don't know if you have any update on that.
This past month, the RPC assisted the Industrial Development Board. We held a community meeting out at TCAT. Commissioner Johnson was there. We had approximately come and go throughout the evening, about 20 residents, maybe 19, maybe 21 total residents from Mint Springs in the surrounding area came and asked a variety of questions. We were there for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and we left with no further questions at the end of the night. This application has not changed since you last saw it and when there was a public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any questions of Mr. Tyndall? Commissioner Knight?
Would you say that you had positive responses from the community of Mint Springs?
The Mint Springs community had a variety of questions. Not all of them dealt with this land specifically. We got off topic quite a bit. But overall, that community is not well received, I would say. Overall, we've had mixed reviews from the community, but from that specific community, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Tyndall? All right, thank you, Jeff. We'll now go into our resolutions. Our first resolution is 1961, resolution approving amendments to the 2018-19 Clarksville Montgomery County School System budget. Any questions on 1961? All right, 1962, I'm sorry, Commissioner Beal.
Thank you. So this is just basically some cleanup budget resolutions, correct? Just kind of move stuff around, so no new money at all, right?
That's correct.
Got it, thank you.
Well, there are some new revenues, but it's making adjustments to all that. As they go through their budget year, they project revenues, and some of those revenues are greater, some may be less, so it's really just a cleanup is all it is. Resolution 1962, resolution to appropriate funding for the purchase of art using funding from bond proceeds. Commissioners, I might just give you a little bit of background on this. We have, in the last 2 years, have used 1% of our bond proceeds to fund public art. And this is a request that's come before our public art committee, whatever, I don't even know their official name, to make a donation for the suffrage monument. You should have all that information in your Dropbox. But I think it's a great project and it's a great use of these funds. Any questions on 1962? Commissioner Knight?
Do we know where they're going to place the monument?
I think it's in the packet, but I think it's down at City Hall on the, I think it's on what would be the south end of that median through there. They have a fountain, and then at the far end is the Eternal Flame. You come up through there, there's a couple of, I think there's one of our Vietnam or World War II monument. And then there's a gap in the median, there's a fountain, and then it'll be kind of up on the Farmers and Merchants Bank end of that median.
Okay, thank you.
All right, 1963 is a resolution to allocate reserve fund monies for the Clarksville Montgomery County Tourism Commission. This is really just a cleanup in the fact that they basically, CVB is a county department, or lack of better words, that's what they are. And so it's just a cleanup of using some of their reserve monies that they're moving around. And I don't think Mr. Green's here, I think Mr. Truitt's here, that could probably answer any questions if anybody has any questions regarding 1963. All right, 1964 is a resolution to amend the budgets of various funds for fiscal year 2019 in certain areas of revenues and expenditures. This is our year-end cleanup resolution. Jeff, I don't know if there's any highlights that you want to address?
Yeah, there's a few.
Okay.
If you go through there, on the first page is just the revenue side. I think the biggest adjustment on that page is in regard to the hotel motel tax, an increase of $150,000. Excuse me. Next page, just some sale of equipment for $10,150. If you go to starting on page 41, just some adjustments to the county mayor's budget and the county commission budget in regards to salaries, where we were transitioning from administrative positions for Ms. Baggett and Ms. Smith and Ms. Gentry. I had to adjust those line items. Going on the next, down at the bottom of that, just some adjustments to the jail budget regarding salaries, trying to cover some of that overtime. The biggest one is on page 42, and it's the same problem we have every year, is our jail medical and dental. We had to increase that line item by $2 million. So that's a huge increase that we've had to deal with. And of course, we've increased the overtime budget by $406,000. We tried to use as many existing funds in the salary line items to cover that as possible, but we did have to increase that by a little bit. Going on to down towards the bottom, increase for medical services for the county coroner medical examiner of $135,000. The next one of interest is the one we've had an issue in previous years under other public health and welfare. About midway down the page on page 42, we had to increase that by $24,000. What that is we have mental health evaluations for misdemeanor cases have to be paid for by the county rather than the state, and that's just one of those that we've had to add money to the budget for this year. The next largest item on that page, the tourism, $475,000. That's actually, it's kind of a good problem to have. We're having to increase that expenditure because our revenues are so much higher. So it's kind of a wash on that. And down at the bottom of the page, you'll see where we've adjusted the beginning fund balance for this fiscal year up to $35 million. Of course, the unassigned fund balance was a change of just under $12.5 million. The next page is just drug control fund, adjusting the fund balance to the good. Next page, 44, is for our highway fund. We moved $250,000 from their capital outlay item to their highway and bridge maintenance so they could purchase additional asphalt to do additional paving that they weren't able to do at the time due to lack of funding. Debt service, just adjustments that we do at the end of the year for our bond issue for that year. And at the bottom are adjustment to fund balance. Capital projects was just an adjustment to the fund balance at the bottom of that page, as well as insurance recovery for the historic courthouse, as well as an adjustment for some match dollars we had to put in for the airport. And then the next page is just in regards to our bond issuing, also some adjustments where we moved some funds. One of the big funds was moved was just under $144,000 for the library north branch. We had funds were left over from the purchase of the land, so we used that money to go towards the design in this next fiscal year for that project. And that's it. Is there any questions, Commissioner Beal?
Commissioner Bill?
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, if you go back to page 41, under the county mayor's section,
Yes, sir.
16,000 increase for supervisor/director. Is that for one position?
That was for the period of time where Mr. Johnson and Mr. Truitt were working together at that time, and we had to pay out vacation for Mr. Truitt once he left as well. So that was for both those.
Okay, but so the salary amount's still staying the same?
It had to be increased for $16,000 for this year, but their salary isn't increasing for next year, no.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of Mr. Taylor? All right. Our next item on the agenda, if I can get to it, is under our reports, nominate committee nominations. Chairman Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. The nominating committee met today at 5:30 and will enter in next week the following nominations. Under the Economic and Community Development Board, which is a 4-year term, Kayla Gold-Levin was nominated to replace Mark Kelly for a 4-year term to expire June 30th of 2023. On the Industrial Development Board and the Health and Education and Housing Board, since they're identical, we read them both as one, and if there's no objection, I will do the same here. So entering at nominations for the Industrial Development Board and the Health and Education Housing Facility, which are both 6-year terms. Don Jenkins was nominated to replace Joyce Norris for a 6-year term to expire June 30th of 2025. Todd Harvey was nominated to replace David Smithfield for a 6-year term to expire June 30th, 2025. And Jeff Turner has been filling an unexpired term of Tim Hall and is now eligible to serve his first 6-year term to expire June 30th of 2025. And those are our nominations.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gannon. Under county mayor nominations, these first two that I read will require commission approval. Under the Parks Committee, a 2-year term. Joe Mills nominated to replace John Gannon for a 2-year term to expire June 2021. Alan Groves nominated to replace Grant Shaw for a 2-year term to expire June 2021. And Commissioner Tangi Smith has been filling an unexpired term and nominated to serve a 2-year term to expire June 2021. And under Judicial Commissioners, a 1-year term, Michael Williams is nominated to serve a 1-year term to expire June 2020. Commissioners, just as a point of information, Mr. Mills replacing Commissioner Gannon, that committee, the rules for that committee call for 3 county commissioners to be on it. Somehow Mr. Gannon weaseled his way on it and became the 4th. I don't know how he did it. No, I'm just kidding. But that's the reason we're not replacing with commissioner. So the balance of the committee is now in order according to our established rule. And then under county mayor appointments, Convention and Visitors Bureau, this is a joint appointment with the city mayor. Jenna Holloman is reappointed to serve another 3-year term to expire June 2022. Jerry Albert is reappointed to serve another 3-year term to expire June 2022. Joel Wallace is appointed to replace Steve Stroman to serve a 3-year term expiring June of 2022. And Brittany Campbell is appointed to fill the unexpired term of Bill Powers with a term to expire June of 2020. Under your reports filed, you'll see the reports listed. I'm sure we'll have some additional reports that will be on our formal agenda. Under old business, you'll see deferred from March Resolution 1934, requesting the Clarksville Montgomery County Regional Planning Commission to perform a study of the Montgomery County zoning resolution for purposes of amendment of the same or a use permit on review for structures and fences. Mr. Tyndall, you want to give your update?
Thank you, Mayor. County Commission, thank you for your patience in this. There was a couple key dates in the middle there. We had the attorney-client privilege session last month to go over some of these things. I think a lot of questions and legalities were answered at that time. Just today, you should have on your iPads and electronically on the Dropbox is a report that's been filed. It's approximately 2.5 pages, gives our understanding of the question, our conclusion, and our research. What did we do the past 2 months here? We obviously reviewed the TCA statutes extensively with County Attorney Tim Harvey. We had several sit-down meetings with building and codes, animal control, county attorney, and others to discuss this. We did do phone interviews with our cohort counties. We chose these counties because they are growing counties that have rural areas that are growing pretty rapidly and could see these types of issues. So Williamson, Wilson, and Rutherford. The overarching theme we got from them is that they're pretty much hands-off. They don't really try to get involved if they don't have to. We read articles from the State Farm Bureau and Ag Extension on backyard chickens, pros and cons, their interpretation of the state laws, and we looked at other cities and counties across the country. But as you remember from the attorney-client privilege, we realized very quickly that the way you treat codes with respect to agriculture in cities in Tennessee varies greatly from how you treat it in counties. So it's our determination that as a non-chartered county in Tennessee, there's a limit to the type and laws and regulations and resolutions that can be created, and included in this is restrictions on agriculture. So it's our conclusion at this time, the RPC staff, that the current zoning resolution remain as written due to the complexities of this and other state statutes regarding agriculture in counties, that it really doesn't need to be changed at this time. The state statutes and state TCA sort of overrides what we have in our code. However, we would go on to say that further definition or clarification, whether it's from the legislation, attorney general, case law, or other thing in the state, should be watched for further clarification on this topic. The real issue we have at hand is the state doesn't really truly define what normal agricultural practices or commercial agricultural practices are. So it's hard to apply that to residential properties, and that's the sort of conundrum we were stuck in the last 2 months is if we can't define it and the state doesn't define it, we have to lean back onto what the state's statutes are. So that's our report out on it. I'll try to address any other questions that weren't addressed last month.
One of the main concerns that a lot of folks had about this was the distance rule. So what is the final determination on somebody that may be in violation of that 200-foot rule?
I think the violation would be it's a structure violation. We can't regulate the agricultural use, but we can regulate structures.
So, but that doesn't just apply to...
It applies to houses, garages, anything that's deemed a structure.
Gotcha. So that's not just ag, that's any zoning.
Right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Tyndall? Do you have to be what I... Yeah, no, as long as it's short.
It's short. Zoning structures are any structure, anything. But structures for agricultural use under the statute are exceptions. So if you go build exactly the same building for a garage, it's a structure that's not exempt from zoning regulations and it has to follow it. If it's housing chickens or animals or goats and you claim it's for agricultural use, then it's exempt from our zoning laws. Does that help you?
That's what I was trying to find out. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Commissioner Smith?
sorry.
with that, can Rod come up for a second, Mr. Streeter? Because with that, anything, I believe we discussed this before, anything under 200 square feet does not have to go through building codes, having a permit pulled, right?
I think, I want him to say what he wants to say, but what I'm trying to say to you is your regulations, whatever they are, do not apply to those buildings for agricultural use. Now, they're still going to have to do their job. So if somebody builds a 5,000 square foot garage with tools and lifts and bays in it to fix cars and puts a chicken in it, it's probably not for agricultural use. But if it's a structure and everything, all indications are used for agricultural purposes, then our zoning and laws do not apply and will affect them that way, correct? Commercial agriculture, which has no definition.
And I completely understand that, and I agree with that, the not being a problem if it's used for agriculture. My point is, even though somebody builds it, because I don't want this to get out of hand and anybody just be able to go and claim that it's agriculture. Even though you're building a building, I believe we discussed this before, your limit was 200 square feet. If it's below 200 square feet, you don't have to go pull a building permit. If it was over 200 square feet, you still had to go pull a building permit and get the proper framing inspections and inspections on that building. So I just want to make sure that it's clear to the public that you can't just go pop a building up at 1,000 square feet and say, well, it's agriculture, I didn't have to pull a permit or get this inspected. No, you still have to get it inspected properly through building codes and make sure that the structure is sturdy. So I just wanted to clarify that for building and code's sake.
No, I agree with the Commissioner. The building code does not clarify what the building is used for. It gives you the exemption if you have a structure less than 200 square feet, it does not require a permit. So I think one of the issues that we've had is if you have a chicken coop that's determined to be more than 200 square feet, you know, I don't think we're going to require a building permit, but in this case, what we've had to do in the past is require that it meet that 200-foot setback or the 50-foot if you had 5 acres or more, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I think going forward, we'll have to look at, I gave you 2 extreme examples. Yeah. Going forward, we'll just have to look at what drops in our lap. But the general principles are agriculture is exempt.
And then I just want to close by saying thank you to Mr. Streeter, Mr. Tyndall, Mr. Harvey for all y'all's research on this after I brought it up a couple months ago.
Thank y'all. Commissioners, under unfinished business, new business, you'll see that next Monday night, we have 2 items that need to come before the body. One is 1965. It's a resolution to accept grant funding for the Montgomery County Animal Control through the Bissell Pet Foundation. Both of these came in after our budget committee met, but they're both something that we need to approve in this fiscal year. And then the other one is 1966, a resolution accepting the Public Improvements Program and Capital Budget 2019 through 2020 through 2023-24, compiled by Montgomery County, approved by the Clarksville-Montgomery County Planning Commission. And Jeff, I think you have something you want to go over on the CIP?
Yes, Mayor. It is the requirement of the planning commissions throughout the state to review city and county capital improvement plans every year. Every county has a little bit different way of doing it. We received these from both the city and the county several weeks ago, and at this past meeting, the Regional Planning Commission commissioners reviewed them and made several recommendations to both the city and the county CIP. They endorsed this plan with the following recommendations. Now, I will say that our recommendation is non-binding. The elected bodies can do whatever they want when it comes to this. These are just recommendations for consideration. Under the CIP for the county, under the public safety projects, there are several projects under Class A pumper, tanker, ladder truck, cascade system, brush truck, hydrants, and an item we didn't really have clarified, access control system. We weren't sure if that was fire related or not, but it amounts to just under $5 million over 5 years to furnish our volunteer fire departments in the county with equipment. I did speak with Ed Baggett about this prior to the meeting, knowing this was probably going to come up, and the Planning Commission voted with this recommendation. I'll just read it into the record. All fire service items under the public safety projects, which I just read, are funded through general funds, which taxes the entire county. The city of Clarksville has a paid fire service, which city residents pay city taxes for. The RPC feels it's inequitable for city residents to be paying county taxes to fund fire service outside the city limits, which they receive little or no benefit from. The county should explore establishing a fire district with its own dedicated tax for fire services in the unincorporated county, thus lessening the overall general fund obligation. Just defer to Jeff Taylor in case any of this is a little misunderstood by the Planning Commission, but that was their recommendation and also endorsing the CIP through 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. I would add that I know that our fire committee has been working diligently on our overall fire service, and I think that, Commissioner Harper, I think that work continues, so thank you. So those two items will be on our agenda. We will have to suspend the rules. One thing quickly before we get into our announcement, Mr. Taylor has something he needed to add for the cleanup, and then Mr. Harper, I'll come to you.
Yes, sir. On the cleanup resolution, there was a couple of items I forgot to mention. I apologize for that. One, in regards to the Fort Campbell agreement with animal control, in order to expedite some of the purchases they need, such as the vehicles, which I think Mr. Caskey had told me it takes 14 to 16 weeks for those to be ordered, I'm going to go ahead and ask that we do a budget amendment next week on the cleanup to add the funding for that, as well as about 2 weeks worth of pay for employees so they can go ahead and be getting trained in the meantime for out there at Fort Campbell, and go ahead and get that in the cleanup. And also, this one just popped up on the radar, and that about animal control we discussed at the budget committee meeting last Thursday. Also, after the budget committee meeting, it was brought to my attention by one of my staff. Juvenile court has been having to pay quite a bit out in detention services. It's putting their budget extremely tight. So we'll probably go ahead and do a budget amendment for that as well, to add funding to other contracted services to cover any additional expenses they may have for detention services to Middle Tennessee.
Commissioner Harper, I think you probably want to speak to the fire thing.
Actually, no.
Okay, okay. Well, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to send my sincere appreciation back to the commission and all of our elected officials. I've had a health situation, had surgery earlier, actually May 6th. And what I wanted to encourage everyone to do is I try to use situations in my own life as an encouragement to others. I would encourage everyone, when you do need to have a colonoscopy, that you do that. It could save your life. Myself, my surgery went very successfully. I'm in a period of recovery now. I'll recover and everything will be fine for me. But do not put off those things that we do not like to do, please. I had a friend at work who had a colonoscopy, discovered 12 polyps last week. Very life-threatening could have been for him. So I would encourage you to exercise that, and please exercise in the form of your own health. I think all of our health folks would be there. And I will say that we have a crack staff at EMS. Actually, our past EMS director and now who's over our first responders, Mr. Edwards, quite some time ago told me exactly what my diagnosis was without the use of any diagnostic tools. He is a treasure. So if you're ever having any health issues, please consult with him as well as your doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Under our announcements, please, if you have any suggested items for the 2020 legislative agenda, please email them to Michelle Newell or Melissa Smith. Both of their email addresses are listed on your agenda. And also, there's a groundbreaking for the Wade Bourne Nature Center this Wednesday, June the 5th at 1:30 p.m. at Rotary Park. If you just come in the park and drive back to the back, you'll see us. And we are also signing the IXCA agreement with Fort Campbell Thursday, June 6th at 10:30. That's going to be out at headquarters at Fort Campbell. If you're interested in attending that, please let Shelley know tonight. That way she can get you in Fort Campbell. And then two other quick items that aren't on your agenda. Commissioner Harper, we just want to say welcome back to you. You kind of stole mine, but I want to say welcome back and glad you're on the mend. And Commissioner Butts is not with us tonight. He lost a real close family friend, and so just keep that family in your prayers, and Commissioner Butts as well. Commissioners, we have no further business, and we'll stand adjourned.